How many times have you been looking forward to a game only to follow up and find out that it's been cancelled? From trailers and screenshots to developer interviews and chance tweets teasing potential features, anything can hook us in and make us invested in a potential project's direction. Sadly though, because the gaming industry is one of the most fast-moving and ruthlessly cutthroat of them all when it comes to the highs and lows of balancing the books, any number of projects can go from dead certs to just dead. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 11 hugely anticipated video games you won't believe got cancelled. Number 11, Scalebound. Let's start with one of the most recent games I still just look at it. I hazard to say Scalebound was one of the reasons many people had confidence in the Xbox One as a console overall. Gameplay was said to be Platinum's first take on an open-world formula, doling out loot grinds and consistent weapon upgrades at a steady clip. Before that approach was overdone and is now stale as hell. The quintessential X-Factor ingredient is that oh-so-sweet Platinum Games combat, which if you've played anything from Bayonetta to Vanquish, Transformers Devastation to Nier Automata, is simply the finest third-person hack and slashery in the business. Sadly, despite copious amounts of gameplay and tons of screenshots, Scalebound was canned in 2017, though the reasons are kind of insane, especially in retrospect as the Xbox One could really do with more exclusives. Microsoft's Phil Spencer, who personally I champion as the dude who salvaged the Xbox One almost single-handedly, said hype was so out of control for Scalebound the final product could have only been a disaster. I mean, I guess, but look to Platinum's own comments from June 2018. They detail how going forward they only want to work on games where they control all aspects of potential sequels and funding. Perhaps this is the reason. Regardless, we're never gonna get How to Devil May Cry Your Dragon, and that just sucks. Number 10, Shadow Realms. Call me a sucker for vampiric underbellies of city structures or demonic force-type gubbins, but I thought Shadow Realms looked brilliant. Developed by BioWare as their first post-Mass Effect 3 game, Shadow Realms was set to be an online co-op brawler released episodically, throwing you and some friends into different scenarios each week or month as magical powers and acrobatics ruled the day. Despite getting pretty far in development, it was supposed to drop in 2015, only a year after we got eyes on and a closed beta was about to go live. It was decided the response overall just wasn't positive enough, and all associated BioWare staff were redistributed across the company. I'm not saying this would have course-corrected BioWare's trajectory overall, but I am saying that I would much rather play Shadow Realms than Mass Effect Andromeda. Number 9, Aliens Crucible. In one of the biggest blunders this side of Sonic making out with a princess, Sega once had a very unique RPG in their arsenal only to cancel it and release the remarkably buggy glitch fest that was Aliens Colonial Marines instead. Crucible was set to be developed by RPG masters Obsidian, creators of the goddammit just make another one already Alpha Protocol, and from the footage available appeared to be very much in the same vein as Mass Effect when it came to combat and character progression. It would have put us in the shoes of a variety of crew members desperately trying to survive against a number of xenomorphs. The nearest comparison that I can think of is the movie adaptation The Thing from 2002. Like in that game, you'd form solid bonds with teammates, building trust through hours of dialogue, only to see them ripped apart when you least expect it. Considering the hatred thousands of fans now have towards Colonial Marines, it's kinda baffling that Crucible not only got the shaft, but continues to be unreleased despite its solid once-in-progress state. Number 8, Star Wars 1313. It comes to something when footage from E3 2012 still holds up perfectly today. Star Wars 1313 boasted fantastic environments, visual flourishes, detailed character models, and a high production value throughout. Telling the story of young Boba Fett on Coruscant, Combat applied the Gears of War stop-and-pop cover system to great effect, having laser fire whiz over our heads as you returned with some blasts of your own. Anyone who played Star Wars Bounty Hunter will remember just how much fun third-person shooting within the Star Wars universe can be, and combining Gears' combat with innovative moves like dragging enemies over cover made 1313 move at a movie-like pace. Sadly, it was terminated when LucasArts shut down, and though Visceral created something of a spiritual successor with their own Star Wars shooter, codenamed Ragtag, EA cleaved that in half too when Visceral was shut down in October 2017. Hey, EA, third-person shooters are still really cool. Please let someone make one. Number 7, Legacy of Kane, Dead Son. Legacy of Kane Dead Son was going to put you in the shoes of two alternating characters, Gain and Asher, the former being a Saradan vampire with a host of otherworldly abilities, and the latter a human whose soul accidentally becomes intertwined with Gain's, mixing their worlds and giving us a pretty sweet premise. Sadly, that's all we got to know before the project was scrapped. However, the extremely brief footage available lends weight to the idea that it was going to be a continuation of the more action-focused entries in the series. If there's any chance in hell the creative team behind this could ever assemble for another proper installment, rather than the laughably, first-person shooter Nosgoth, that'd be just dandy. Number 6, Agent. Rockstar are one of the most malleable developers in gaming, but a genre they're yet to fully dip their toes into is stealth. Yes, Manhunt was great, but the sound of Agent was even better. The thing with Agent was that we only got a batch of screens back after the reveal in 2007, but it was enough to get everyone well and truly invested. Even the official press release was elusive in all the right ways, saying that Agent would take us on a paranoid journey into the world of counterintelligence, espionage, and political assassinations during the height of the Cold War at the end of the 1970s. It's great stuff and would have easily been one of the biggest tonal change-ups since the GTA in a high school style delights of Bully. Though the Agent trademark was renewed multiple times and various insiders have leaked more concept sketches across the last decade, Rockstar abandoned the Agent trademark altogether in November 2018. Either that means it's got a different name after a decade of nothing, or this particular Agent has retired before their first mission. Number 5, Fez 2. Phil Fish poured his heart and soul into Fez, which became many people's Game of the Year for 2012. Fish's divisive, outspoken personality, though, that wasn't received quite so well. On an episode of Game Trailer's Invisible Walls, critic Marcus Beer called Fish a tosspot and a f***ing asshole for complaining about being asked questions by the press about the state of indie game development, despite being one of the movement's leading figures. After quite a lot of feedback to his various outbursts alongside this, Fish tweeted, "I'm done. Fez 2 is cancelled, goodbye," as an overall response to how he felt he'd been treated by gamers and the press since release. Phil Fish was later victim to a hacking which revealed a huge amount of personal information, leading to his company Polytron being put up for sale. As he stated, "No reasonable offer will be turned down. I am done. I want out." Needless to say, there will never be a Fez 2. Number 4, 8 Days. In 2005, Sony dropped a trailer for what became one of that year's most anticipated titles, 8 Days, the gameplay footage of which appeared a year after, only months before Gears of War would define the experience this seemed to be going for. It's easy to look back on the gameplay footage and batch of leaked screens from 2009 as being just another shooter, but back in 2006, this dropped jaws. Looking like we were finally going to be able to engage in some more John Woo/Matrix-style gunfights, where debris and the environment deform realistically as we dart between cover, it could have been tremendous if only Sony had seen it through. Apparently starring Ving Rhames, Gary Oldman, and Dennis Hopper, and being spread across 8 separate states that would tell a story across the titular 8 days, in the end the project fell into limbo thanks to Sony stating that they were moving into online games. Despite solid promotion and star power, 8 Days just didn't work for the PlayStation's lineup as they saw it, but I can't help but think that it would be a perfect fit today. Number 3, Daredevil, the man without fear. One of the slickest and just downright coolest superheroes there'll ever be, Daredevil, RIP his Netflix incarnation, was set to make his major video game debut following in the footsteps of the spectacular Spider-Man game on PS1. However, even though developer Encore had almost everything in place, it was never to be, falling apart at the last second alongside the 2003 movie. Let's be honest though, it's totally baffling as to why this didn't come out. Even the trailer still looks incredibly enticing, and that's a decade and a half after the initial release window. Give this a lick of polish and a new graphics engine, and fans of superheroes in general would lap it up. Taking a couple of pages out of Spidey's PS1 book, combat looked to be fairly similar, and with swinging mechanics that mimic the wallcrawler's sense of in-game motion almost identically, who wouldn't love to dive into a similar experience but with Daredevil in the titular role? Definitely another for the "oh god, just please make it anyway" pile. Just give us a Daredevil game. Number 2, The Getaway 3. The first Getaway game remains one of those times we all saw some gameplay footage or a batch of screenshots and suitably lost our minds at just how incredibly realistic and mind-blowing this game's version of digital London looked. Little did we know just how far graphics would go in the future, but when the first Getaway dropped in all its Cockney gangster and Snatch-style swagger, it was the nearest thing we had to an English version of Grand Theft Auto. Sony actually said back in 2008 that the series wasn't cancelled either, but they would be entering into what turned into a lengthy hiatus, culminating in the Getaway London Heist on PSVR, though that too has since ditched the Getaway part of its name. Regardless, I'm holding out hope that at some point in the future, the PS4 eventually sees another Getaway in some form. This generation's technology does the big smoke the utmost justice. Number 1, Batman Gotham by Gaslight. Just look at that ridiculously cobbled together costume. No silver screen bat has anything on how brilliantly stocky this version of Batman was set to be, and although it would see some semblance of life inside Arkham Origins as an unlockable costume, the full game of Gotham by Gaslight that was based off the fantastically dark one-shot novel of the same name never saw the light of day. Developed by Day One Studios, those of horror FPS Fear fame, you can see just how well their atmospheric tendencies were transferring across to a character like Batman who revels in the shadows. shadows. With a perfectly animated cape and many steampunk-looking street corners, Gotham by Gaslight would have provided a great atmosphere for a Batman game. Information is scarce aside from a small amount of gameplay footage, alongside the knowledge that the project was canned in relation to THQ's closure, when they couldn't seem to secure the rights to keep going. Now, I don't know about you, but the very idea of a super weighty Batman whose costume is whirring away as he battles a steampunk Joker in the midst of Victorian England is a mighty cool idea, and one that at least the comic delivered on. Why this wasn't picked back up following the huge success of Batman Arkham is beyond me, but here's hoping that it's remedied some point in the future.